You're listening to the Art of Quantum Healing podcast with your host, Lisa Nadler. Each week we'll be welcoming divine souls who have overcome trauma, mental health addiction, and found next level abundance through mind, body, and soul connection. We will be going deep on one subject to teach and guide you. My mission is to help you high vibe, thrive with inner peace, passion, and purpose, all in the name of evolution. Welcome to another episode of the Art of Quantum Healing. Today I have a spectacular, I'm going to use those words because the work that Jonathan does is literally mind-blowing, and I'm so excited to have him on the podcast. So I'd like to introduce you to Jonathan D. Potter, and we're going to be going deep on plant medicine. I just want to read you a little bit about John before he chimes on in. Jonathan is the founder and CEO of Behold Retreats, a bespoke wellness service that facilitates journeys of self-discovery and transformation, supported by the scientifically proven benefits of plant medicine therapy. Jonathan is passionate about raising awareness on the benefit of plant medicine therapy, one I just 100% in, and its potential to improve well-being and mental health outcomes. This led him to launch Behold Retreats in 2020, providing curated programs incorporating a memorable plant medicine retreat in a safe, legal, and highly supported setting. Originally from Hawaii, USA, Jonathan is currently based in Bangkok, Thailand, traveling often to continue his research into the best plant medicine retreat centers around the world. He enjoys yoga, meditation, surfing, and is energized by big, bold ideas. I love it! Welcome, Jonathan! I'm so excited.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. I'm excited to be here as well. I think there's such a strong overlap between, the topic of quantum healing and what's possible through the world of plant medicine. So I know we're going to have a great chat.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, I was sharing with you before we hopped on, I've had a tiny dabble into the world and the wonders of what plant medicine can actually do for you. But there is just so much more in the quantum field and the multi-dimensions and beyond that I think, like even like someone that's experienced as you is probably only just tapping into what we can actually do and what the benefits of the beautiful plants. So how did you get into plant medicine?
Yeah, so I'm a bit of an unlikely candidate, if I'm to be perfectly honest. About 5 years ago, I was in the corporate world leading a large team in management consulting in Hong Kong. And I just reached a point in my life where I recognized that, climbing the ladder wasn't going to bring me any incremental joy or good things in life. And so I needed a fundamentally different approach to what was to come next. I was an atheist at the time. I didn't know what that thing was going to be. And it wound up that the spiritual path was to be a fundamental part of what was missing from my life. And for me, it took ayahuasca, a retreat in Peru with ayahuasca and a couple friends of mine to really slam that door open, if I may describe it as such. And
The first thing you did was ayahuasca.
yes, indeed.
Holy shit.
All or nothing. I've always been kind of an all or nothing type of person. And,
Yeah.
I grew up around actually a lot of people, my friends from young ages found substances, and I didn't observe anything good from it, right? A lot of abuse, a lot of, just low energy, a lot of addiction. And, honestly speaking, they didn't wind up in very good places in life. And so I was pretty hesitant and sensitive. But once I kind of recognized what was potential through these experiences, I kind of found it within myself to take the plunge. And it's been a humbling and humbling journey of unlearning for the 5 years since.
I love that. A humble journey of unlearning, because that's exactly what it is, isn't it? Everything that we think that we know, we don't actually know a lot at all. It's same as when you're going on that healing journey. It's almost like you've really got to just strip yourself back and just know that you are just the tiniest speck on a huge world where plants are actually king, and we don't even realize that what they actually do. They're absolute fucking king. You hear people saying, "Oh, you're my king and your queen." No. You are a tiny speck on this world. You think that you're not.
Yeah. Beautifully said. And there's such peace in that recognition, not from an academic perspective, but from an experiential perspective, right? So when we recognize that, yes, of course, the universe loves us and wants great things for us, but that we don't need to take ourselves so seriously or what we're doing so seriously, then it allows us to engage in the play of life in a fundamentally different way.
Yeah, and life's supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to be so serious. And we hold so, and you know what? There's a lot of it is the outside noise. And when we get ourselves involved in all the outside noise and we realize it's actually an inside journey, things really start to shift, right? Because you start to just let everything else around you dissolve and you stop being a seeker and you go internally. And I love it when you say on your, so either on one of your videos or it was on your website that you learn how to discover your higher truths. Can you speak more into that?
Yeah, so I think we live in a time where finally we are coming to recognize that reality is subjective for each of us, right? And equally so, these experiences are highly subjective in their nature, and so it's important that we set a context that allows for that for people as they experience, the higher levels of consciousness, or even indeed the lower levels of consciousness. Often the good tends to be amplified in the lower levels of consciousness, diminished a little bit. But ultimately, what I'm referring to there is there are what I would describe as universal truths that are available to people as we clear our lower level emotions, the fear, the shame, the guilt, the apathy, the grief, the pride, the envy, the anger, all of that lower level stuff that we have many layers of stuck in our mental and emotional bodies. Once we clear that stuff, then, and the medicine can play a fundamental role in that, then we are able to break through into higher levels of consciousness like peace, love, joy, and have these, mystical revelations that are often described as, the interconnectivity of all things, or universal love, or God consciousness. These are mystical experiences that have been written about and spoken about for millennia. And most of the world now look at those things and think of them as, something that isn't real or isn't possible as part of the human experience. But fundamentally, it is. And that's where I think these medicines can play a role, because they just remove all of the noise so that we can see ourselves, more truly as we are.
And I know that when I did ayahuasca, that was a really big thing. And the big thing that the grandmother said to me was relinquish your mind. Because I'm a person that used to, this was, even though I believe that my mind, I now live from my second mind, my heart, but I used to live all from this mind. It used to be a place that was so controlling. And, for me, and that was the other thing, the control. Why are you always trying to control? Why are you always trying to control? And I'm like, wait a minute, so that was a really big thing that I got, that understanding that I can actually, that you don't need to control anything, and relinquishing the mind allowed you to go on such a deeper journey into who you really are. And to me, if I can talk about, for me, discovering my higher truth was discovering me, was disconnecting and then reconnecting. It was like, whoa, what the hell? And when you spoke about before, and you said that, what did you say when you did ayahuasca, it was because it was a part that was missing, and it was the spiritual part. And I think if everybody could put their hand on their heart, for most of the world, although it's less now, that's the biggest part that's missing, because it's the part that we're always led to be, oh, it's woo woo, oh, it's just all, it's all that sort of, oh, don't be so friggin' stupid, that's not, anything to do with it. But spiritual it's a missing piece to so many. And it's a missing piece to who we are. Those fragments are all out there, right? So for me, ayahuasca really brought myself back into home. It brought myself back into it was quite a big soul journey for me. So when you talk about, and it's the other thing I'm just fascinated about, is the different psychedelics, like the DMT and the mushrooms. I've never experienced any of them, because, and this is, I'm going to speak about me, which might be what some of the listeners are thinking. For me to go into that space, it scared the shit out of me. I was like, whoa, hang on a minute, because I was always like, oh, I'm going to see spiders running around, and then I'm going to be in this journey for the next how many hours, and that's all I'm going to see. You know what I mean? Like I was really fearful of it, and I think a lot of people, their hesitation to do it is fear. And I mean, you'd know more of what their hesitations are, but so could you talk into the benefits and the difference of those sort of that sort of plant medicine?
Yeah, and I think the first thing I'd say is, it's what you've described there is beautiful, in terms of being able to return your mind to the right place in the hierarchy of self, right? That's so fundamental to what this work is all about. That I love that quote. the mind is a terrible master but a wonderful servant, right?
I love that.
Once you're able to disidentify with your mind, then life just becomes so much easier, right? It's just the crazy cycles just diminish a little bit. The first thing that I'd say is that the anxiety or the fear in relation to these experiences is completely normal, right? Any adventure, if you were to climb Everest, equally so, you would have butterflies in the stomach. I think it's inherent to any real adventure into the unknown, to have some anxiety and some butterflies associated with it. I still get it before each and every journey. And if that should ever not be the case, I think I'd know that I'm done at that point in time, right?
So, well, you're an ego.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think the other aspect to this is that the gold is where we least want to look, right? And so that's what's powerful about these medicines, is that they can illuminate some of the shadows that we have been so purposefully avoiding, because we know there's some spiders there in our subconscious or in our consciousness. And so the medicines, they're trying to harmonize our mind, body, heart, and spirit to a single vibration, and then bring us up into a higher vibration. And so as that process is unfolding, then what tends to happen is that some of the dissonance, the lower level energies that need to be cleared, are amplified, right? And so that's what leads to some of the more painful and challenging experiences. Another quote that comes to mind is, "We can't heal what we won't feel." And so people can feel a lot of pain, honestly speaking, in these experiences, because they've been through trauma, known or unknown, earlier in their lives, that they haven't yet resolved and they haven't yet uncovered. And so, for me personally, there was some early childhood trauma that I didn't even know was there. And so uncovering that and releasing that was so beneficial, but also explained, for me, it explained a number of my character traits that were previously unexplained. And so, sometimes people say, well, why would you want to go uncover your childhood trauma? Well, fundamentally, it is holding you back today. And so once your brain reconnects with it, and then all of the emotions associated with it comes to the surface, then finally you're able to process, release, and move past some of those blockages that you may intuitively feel, but may not quite know how to access in order to, progress in terms of your own development. So those are a few of the things that come to mind. But but I haven't said much about the medicine. So if you've got any specific questions there, let me know.
So just on what you're just speaking about, I just remember, for me, a big thing that I release, because as you know, what I do is trauma release work. So it's getting rid of the emotions that are in your body. And for me, doing the plant medicine was probably 6 months to a year, or probably even more, of a therapy that you could actually give somebody for them actually removing stuff from their body. And I think it's a beautiful thing, and anyone that listens to my podcast knows that for me, processing the emotion is the most important thing, because it creates the light, and be able to have the love and the joy and the happiness. And for me, it was the level of love that I was allowed myself, because my dad left when I was, basically the day I was born. He walked in and said, see you later. So for me, I had a lot of stuff that happened around that I didn't know. And when I processed that emotion without because I think, the brain, even when you think about something, some event that's happened, it's reliving that, because it doesn't know between now or the past or the present or you're actually reliving that emotion. So you're trapping more and more emotion and trauma inside your body. So for me, the plant medicine released so much internally, and I was purging, there was definitely purging going on. And then afterwards, I just had the most euphoric feeling, and I knew that I had healed fucking months and months and months and months and months of trauma. It was such a freeing, I felt my heart. It was amazing. What are some of the biggest things that people, when they've been to your retreats, they come away and they're like, holy moly, this is how I now feel? Because I think we can talk a lot about the things that you go through when you're in there, but I think it's really important to acknowledge the way that you feel afterwards, because let's be honest, you've got to go through some of the messy shit to get to the happiness. That's just all there is to it when it comes to healing work.
Yeah, Yeah, so so there's two ways that we serve clients. One is just a retreat, and the second is a more holistic approach to doing more of the mental and emotional work as part of the preparation and the integration. Because what you just described there is so fundamental and overlooked in relation to this work, which is that most people are disconnected from their emotional body. And so, just them stepping into a plant medicine retreat without understanding what patterns of mind they're trying to rewire or how to release emotions really limits the potential of this work. So you can have this, profound experience on retreat and then go back to home sweet home and everything returns to normal, because fundamentally you haven't done any of the work in the 3D. You've just gone and had a transcendent, spiritual experience. And so, so when we work with clients in that kind of 7-week approach, then typically the transformations, I think, are more sustained. So I'll start by sharing just a few kind of examples of what I see, client stories that have been more positive, and then I'd be happy to also to share a few that have been a little bit more challenging, honestly speaking, because I think it's important that people hear these stories as well. In terms of, one of my favorite ones was one of our clients, tech executive, been working hard in Silicon Valley for 35 years and, And he came back and his text message to me was, "This has been more amazing than I ever could have possibly imagined. I cleared 50 years worth of shit in 10 days." And, yeah, and so he was back in I think 2.5 weeks later, he was back for another retreat because he had cleared all the past stuff and now he was wanting to think forward. And since then, he's basically dropped 2 of his companies. He's managing his third company remotely. He's bought an old beautiful sailboat in Hawaii. He's driving around the little junker in Kauai and having the absolute time of his life. We're friends on Instagram now because we became quite close. And that's an example of a transformation that I thought was pretty
important, right? He saw what was actually important in life.
Yeah, he's enjoying himself. That's and that's what I love to hear. Is that reminds. I didn't have this story in mind, but there was another client, and we tend to help more clients that are already in a good place and want to go to a better place, but rather than those that are in a bad place and want to be in a better place. But there's another gentleman who, after his journey, he said, "This is the first time in more than 10 years that I've enjoyed being myself." It was like, wow, that's heavy, it brings tears to your eyes, right? To think that for 10 years he hasn't enjoyed being himself.
Did he know that at the time? Or was it after? Because that's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know, to be honest. I really don't know. Another journey that I thought was, meditators. When meditators come through us, always love guiding them because they have such a strong foundation for a breakthrough, right? Like everything is pretty much teed up for them to have an incredible experience. Yeah. And so,
hello.
Yeah, exactly. And that was the case for me. Once I found some really good healers that knew what they were doing, and I started doing private work with them, I made more progress with them working for just a couple of weeks than I had in 3.5 years prior, going to all these kind of 5-star group retreats, et cetera. So, for people who are in a position to really invest in themselves, like working with high quality private healers who really can do the transmutation of energy on your behalf. And that's the difference between, attending a medicine ceremony or attending a retreat and working with a healer, is that they're transmuting on your behalf. And so once meditators in particular start working in a context like that, you just see the speed at which their, spiritual progression can unfold. It's mind-bending, the stories that they come back with.
Source they have? Do you think it's the channel, the clear channel, and it's the like their chakras are all aligned and they're very connected and they can get straight in there?
I think part of it is also in relation to the energetic commitment to the spiritual path, right? So they've already got this like on a daily basis, they're setting time aside for themselves in terms of their own spiritual progression. And so when the medicine sees that, it's like, okay, here we go.
Here we go. Yeah. And I suppose they would be least resistant too, if you're used to being in in that space? Because I know that I've got a shaman that I work with, and he does once a month. He comes into my field. He's from America, and he clears what needs to be cleared, and then it's such a beautiful thing. And I know that for me, after that, I really connect more. So I never had thought about that until you said about working with a healer. So that's really interesting. Anyway, side note.
Yeah, for me, I do share with people. I'm like, look, most people do get into this work in a group context. There's a sort of kind of shared sense of safety, right? You're in there with a group of other like-minded types of people, and then again, budgets permitting, or finding the right healer that one really resonates with. People tend to move over time into a private direction where they don't really have to think about, speak with any other people during what are some of the most intensive experiences of our lives. So that tends to be a little bit of a progression. And when good friends or people from my business network come to me, I always tell them, look, like, honestly speaking, you can go spend years attending lots of nice group retreats and camp in sitting around the fire and having and sharing nice meals and talking about the world and consciousness, or you can just go work with someone for a week or two and like make exponentially more progress in a shorter space of time.
Yeah. So do you take people when it comes to the ayahuasca and the different ones that you do? Because you do another one, don't you? You do is it the toad? What's the toad?
We do. Yeah, we work with psilocybin, 5-MeO, DMT, and ayahuasca. We also do a little bit of work with San Pedro, the cactus, but far less. And the other aspect is we are going to also introduce more medicines over time, because there are so many other medicines that just haven't had the brand recognition or momentum behind them. And so, we're excited to introduce some of those medicines to our clientele as well.
Well, as I was saying to you, I did that NRI, and there's only about 4 or 5 of the plants or the trees in the whole of the world. So, and that was pretty oof. And they actually did that with the ayahuasca, although I didn't get to go to the retreat. So it was, and there was lots of different plants that they introduced, and there's so much more to it, isn't there? So when there was a part that you were that I was fascinated with, and I'm sort of really want to go slightly this way at the moment, but pineal gland and third eye and spiritual growth with psychedelics, like, how would you know if your pineal gland is open or closed, and same as your third eye? How would you say that people could understand how to actually start to open that part up? Because we know that the water's shit. Don't drink the water. If you're drinking tap water, please stop now. The crap that they put in there to numb us down and make sure that we're not connected is unbelievable. But how would you start somebody, because there's some people listening that don't have any sort of knowledge of the pineal gland or third eye. And to me, there's such important things for really connecting to your higher dimensional work.
Yeah, I think the shortcut answer is plant medicine, because that's gonna open it up.
There you go.
But let's just park that one for a second and go to other things that I think people should also explore and consider. I think there's a lot of great programs, courses, apps for meditation, right? And so a lot of people struggle with meditation, but even setting 5 or 10 or 20 minutes aside each day, people over the space of just a month or two will begin to report some pretty profound benefits. So, any listeners that are trying to develop their spiritual path, I think that's obviously a first place to look. I think the other aspect is just being really conscious of diet and water, as you mentioned before. So we've got calcification of the pineal gland, which is what's keeping it closed. A lot of the additives in water, of course, is a big problem in relation to that. And then, of course, what we're eating. So a lot of the processed foods that are off the shelf, if you walk around a supermarket, you and I know the ones in Australia and New Zealand pretty well, and it's like there's only like 15% food in there, right? It's the rest of it is packaged nonsense with a whole bunch of additives in it. And that stuff just wreaks havoc on all systems, including the pineal gland. The other thing that I think can also provide benefits is just breath work. Doing breath work, I think, is another powerful practice that can certainly play a role in opening the pineal gland. There's actually an article we put on our website in terms of this topic specifically, like how to decalcify your pineal gland. So for any listeners, look up Behold Retreats pineal gland, and it should be the first thing that pops up.
Or even better, share it with me, and when this it'll be in the comments below. We'll put it in there so people can actually find it, because it's, and you know, everyone says that, oh, how do I start my journey? How do I actually get onto this? How do I actually, you know, start to awaken? And when they start feeling like it. And meditation can be one of the hardest things to do, because, you know, like I said before, we all live so much in our minds because there's so much external noise that this is, to an old monkey mind, to calm this aspect is very hard. What would be some of the things that you would say to help people just to drop into their body? Like, I mean, breath work is brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. It really is, isn't it? It just brings you back to your center, brings you back into balance. Is there anything else that you would say, or just to allow it like a card, just to keep on going, the monkey mind?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think in terms of managing the monkey mind, I would say Vipassana retreat. You know, it's a hell of a commitment to yourself, to be perfectly honest, right? 10 days of absolute silence and hardcore meditation. I think, you know, I wasn't well guided in the integration of my first retreat, and honestly speaking, like, I didn't benefit that much as a result. Like, it was a transformational experience, but I wasn't really guided in the integration. However, I am grateful that in the one piece of paper that they gave me on the way out the door, it did say, try a Vipassana retreat. And so then I had, you know, subsequent to that, I did have a few more signposts in life that pointed me back in the same direction. So finally I was like, okay, it's time to do this. And, you know, that is incredible. You know, the giving ourselves the space to witness the mania that exists within our own minds, and just the rampant, incessant thinking that is not going in any particular direction. You recognize that, you know, the bus is going, but you're not driving. And so that begins a very different understanding of our own consciousness and what's actually playing out in the realms of mind. You know, there's some statistics that I often share, which is that, you know, in the US, the National Science Foundation, they did research that shows your typical person has between 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts per day. About 100% of those thoughts are egoic thoughts. So they're I, me, my. 95% of those thoughts are repetitive. So it's the same thoughts over and over again. And 85% of those thoughts are negative. So we think a ton. We think only about ourselves. We think the same things about ourselves, and mostly bad things about ourselves. And so most people, when they hear that, they just say, oh, well, not me. And that's because fundamentally they're not aware of their own patterns of mind. And so they're quickly, you know, deflecting that. And look, the ego construct, the mind in of itself, is a defense mechanism, right? It's been wired and evolved to be a defense mechanism. And so it's very difficult for people to actually confront that in living everyday life. And I think a container like a Vipassana retreat really provides the basis and the opportunity for that.
Do you do that at all, or?
I meditate quite a bit. I myself have only attended one Vipassana retreat, but I will certainly attend more. But I mean, once you kind of begin that process, and I think then it's much easier to kind of continue that evolution yourself, you know, and with that, you know, I very much see the mind as a modulator. And so what you tend to experience is that the quantum of thoughts goes very significantly down, and the quality of thoughts goes significally up. And so that's a nice place to be, you know, and again, returns the mind to where it should be.
When I did that 10-day dieta, it was amazing that the hardest thing for me to do was sit with my boredom. Because we're so used to picking up a phone or, you know, or keeping our mind occupied. And boredom to me was like, well, I'm not supposed to be bored because we're taught to keep ourselves busy. So this whole reprogramming that we believe when we're young, or we go through when we're developing in our development stages, you know, it's actually better that being in the boredom is one of the most beautiful places you can be, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the space by which we can discover, I think, our true selves. There's so much. And I think the big trick in terms of the human experience is in relation to recognizing the primacy of the inner world, right? We've got all of our senses are pointing out. our sense of smell and taste and sight, and all of these things are pointing outwards, which leads us to believe that all of the answers are out here. We're trying to, develop our identity and understanding of ourselves by bouncing off of the outside world. And I think, we're at a tipping point where more and more people are realizing this is insane. It's not scrolling on social media. It's not out there, it's in here. And so all the madness that's happening out there is just a reflection of the madness that's happening in here, individually and collectively.
Yeah, it's funny whenever I go to whenever I go to someone's house, or whenever I'm coaching someone, I'm always like, okay, so tell me a little bit about your house. Is it cluttery? Do you have lots of things around? Because somebody's home is absolutely a reflection of their mind, and my home used to be fucking terrible. It used to have shit everywhere. So I can definitely say this is true, because now I can't have, everything's got to be clean, and it's not OCD, but to me, a clean house is like a clean mind. And if you do all this work on your house, but you don't do any housekeeping in your mind, and to do something like a plant journey, if you're listening and you haven't done one, oh my god, it's one of the biggest gifts I believe that you can give to yourself. It really is.
I love what you said there, and it's so true. Change is afoot when people start cleaning up their physical environment. That's the truth. Like, even you've got some big stuff happening that's coming for you in the work context. You don't start there. Where you start is you'll start by cleaning up your house, and because I find that so often the precedent to big positive changes coming into real life, as it were, or work life or love life, even.
Yeah, and don't look externally for somebody else to come and do your housework. Do it yourself.
I'm a little bit guilty on that one. I've lived in Asia for too long.
Yeah, come on. I mean, you have to. I remember when I was in Bali, and I was like, I don't want a housekeeper. And they were like, no, you have to. Otherwise, you take the food off someone's plate. And I'm like, okay. In the end, I had about 3 housekeepers, and I was sitting there going, what do I do with myself now? See, the boredom. I couldn't handle the boredom. It's so funny. What would be the favorite retreat that you do, that people get the most, like, boom? What would be the favorite one that you facilitate, that you absolutely love?
Yeah, so it's very easy to recommend this one. I think a week long with a private healer doing a 5-MeO DMT retreat. 5-MeO DMT is often referred to as the God molecule, toad venom, Bufalo alvarius. It comes with many names, but it's such a powerful medicine, right? It's generally recognized as 4 to 6 times more powerful than ayahuasca,
Wow.
it's a profound medicine. And so when you're working with a healer that's able to channel the medicine and transmute energy on your behalf, then it is quite incredible.
So you do the medicine, and you have your own healer for that 7 days.
Yes, often too, a facilitator and a healer, and we just go deep with people. So we work with a lot of leaders and executives who have been, often they've been interested in this space, studying this space for some years, sometimes even a decade, and then finally there's like, okay, I'm going to do this, and I want to do it right. And so we're blessed to be able to hold space for them and to help them through their
baby. Far out. So they come. They obviously they do some sort of diet beforehand to cleanse the body, and then they sit with. So what actually is the medicine that you're talking about? What actually is it that they sit with?
Yeah, so it comes in 2 forms. Actually, comes in more than 2 forms. So it's got a synthetic form, a plant-based form, and a toad animal-based form. We predominantly work with the synthetic and the animal-based, but we're about to launch a retreat also with the plant-based, which is quite a different experience. I'll park that for the time being. But this medicine is one that is smoked, the synthetic as well as the toad.
Yeah.
And it's very fast acting. So the peak of the experience is about 20 minutes itself. And during a breakthrough experience, it's non-dual, right? So time and space cease to have meaning. Subject, object.
What it is.
Yeah. And so we are, again, during a breakthrough experience, we are joined to the whole. The illusion of the separate self is completely dissipated. And so, that's an experience that I think, if people are like, look, I need to resolve my trauma in my story, and or if I've got physical ailments that I need to heal in the physical body. Generally speaking, I would say on balance, let them of course do their own research and make their own decisions, but on balance, I would generally put them in the direction of ayahuasca. For most of my friends, where I've got a pretty good feeling of where they're at. People, in the professional network, once I interview them or one of our team interviews them, then if they're of a sound mind and ready for a powerful experience, then private 5-MeO is a good way to, shall we say, clear the low level stuff and get to access to higher levels of consciousness. It doesn't always take place. I did promise that I would share challenging stories before. So we had a client recently. He's a tech CEO from London, and his wife was a life and health coach. Both amazing people. They came and they did a private retreat with us with 5-MeO with two of our very talented healers, and they had a very challenging experience. Not just one of them, both of them. Not just one journey, all three journeys.
Really?
And so, yeah, so they had, they were down there in the lower levels of consciousness, and it was the death and the destruction and the torment and all of that stuff. But and so they came out of that, a little bit surprised. They were like, we thought we were going to experience, oneness.
That was me in ayahuasca.
Yeah, all of these profound things. And but that being said, they have, because they also did the coaching alongside that, they were over the weeks that followed able to return to a new baseline high, because they had healed so much of those lower level energies, right? And so they were just at the beginnings of trying for a baby and stuff like that. So the fact that they've done a lot of this deep healing and brought themselves back in their relationship back to a much better place is really beautiful, despite the fact that they didn't have those profound, joyous, loving experiences that of course everyone would hope for during such a retreat.
That's actually what I learned with ayahuasca, because I went and I did it with my hubby, and he saw like him standing on a hill, and he had his lion and his eagles, and he felt himself release this pain that he had in his body and his illness and all sort of thing. And I'm like, yeah, man, I'm so connected. And I let my ego get in the way. I'm going to have such profound experiences, and mine was really like, woo, and I'm like, what he had. So I totally get it, but it was absolutely perfect, right? Because I was trying to control it, and that was the biggest message that she gave me. Lisa, relinquish control, relinquish the mind. So I was like thinking about what was going to happen, and where he's the sort of person who, like, I'm a hunter mind, he's a farmer. He's like la la la, and I'm like go like ADD. So he went in me with her like, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm just going to do it with my wife because she sounds interesting, and it was so fucking profound for him, and I'm like. So I get it, but what I got, and this is what I think about for your the people that you just spoke about, you always get exactly what you need. You always get exactly what you need. So you have to just when you do the journey, just let go to whatever's going to happen. Otherwise, you do, don't you? It's like, oh, that wasn't what I thought it was going to be. Yeah, it's interesting. It's so interesting.
100%. And I think that's as you said, that's a large part of it, is allowing life energy to flow through us, right? And not taking ourselves out of the driver's seat to a great extent, to be able to let these experiences unfold as they might, and recognizing that there are much larger forces at work than we might typically recognize on a day-by-day basis. And again, once we truly integrate that understanding into everyday life, and also recognize that the universe is constantly sending us signals to help us attune further to what is and what we are, then again, that allows for a different relationship between what's going on in the outside world and our response to that in the inner world.
The inner world, it's just such a mystical place, isn't it? It really is. And it's funny for me, when I was looking into it, I was in a place where I was always consumed with what was external. As I said before, it was like, what can I find that's going to heal me? What can I find that's going? What do I need to do that's going to fix me? Because you always think that you're broken, and how do I need to find more of me? And when you really go within, and which is what plant medicine is, it's just it's that, as I said, that disconnection to the reconnection. And for me, like, there was parts of my soul that through my journey of childhood that I left behind because I was a scared little baby, or I was an adult, or, you know, because I was sexually abused. I had a lot of mental illness, and I went into drugs and alcohol, and, you know, my coping mechanisms were just blah. So, you know, that was the other thing that happened to me. And if anyone's actually, just wanted to actually talk about this, which is interesting. Like, I became quite a big drug user and alcohol, and that was my numbing points. And when I did ayahuasca, I stopped myself from going up and getting another go of it, because I had running through my mind, you're a pig, because I was a real pig. I was, you know, like, it's not a grab of cocaine at night. Like, oh, I give into it. I was always looking for it. I was an absolute pig. And so for me, it was interesting because it brought some old patterns back into play that I didn't realize that I hadn't dealt with. And so it actually, you know, have you dealt with many people that have been, well, you probably have, of course you have, that have been addicts that come up against a lot of resistance, like, or even just people that come up against big resistance to allow themselves just to let go?
Yeah, there's a few things there that I think are worth building upon. You know, I think one of our trauma therapists, she believes that something like 80% of people have experienced childhood sexual abuse to a greater or lesser extent, and she served a lot of clients, and you know, and most of us don't know. I think is what's happened. You know, that was the case for me. I didn't know. And I was, you know, fortunate to have super loving, protective parents. And so when I discovered it, I was like, what? You know, like, how is that possible? Yeah, so I mean, I think, you know, the trauma is the basis for all of these coping mechanisms, right? It's not that these are problems; these are solutions. Whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, whether it's sex, you know, porn, many, you know, mod eating, so many solutions to avoiding the painful feelings that are there. And so, yeah, I mean, we've actually only supported. It's not kind of addiction support is such a specialized sort of area, and it requires, on average, you know, a much deeper container, I would say, and a much more individualized medical care in terms of what I think is really required in order to do this work in a deep way. Just for the benefit of any of your guests listening, anyone who's exploring this in relation to curing addiction would recommend looking at a medicine known by Iboga, Iboga, because it's not a medicine that we work with. We may over time, but that is the one that people should be looking into as a primary.
That's what they go for, isn't it? I think, oh, what's going to be set? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so Iboga is, and it's medically supervised and tends to be, you know, there are a number of clinics, particularly in Mexico, I think a few in Europe as well, that are really just specialized around this area. So we have had a few clients that in the past suffered with addictions. They tend to have pretty intensive, they release a lot during the experience because they're still holding a lot. You know, the gentleman who I shared, you know, he hadn't enjoyed being himself for 10 years. He was a previous addict. And so, yeah, he released a lot. Yeah. And so for people who are, he was attending a small group retreat rather than a private experience. But for people who want to do this and want to do this right, would encourage them to consider medically supervised, context, private. That's not something that we specialize in. Look elsewhere, but you know, do this in the right context for yourself.
Because I think also with someone like that, I don't know about you, but for me, it's the integration period. Like, a lot of people, well, not a lot, but the one of the big things that when I did my ayahuasca, they said that there's so many, I'm getting rookies, so many people coming to do it, you know, that are facilitating it, that really have got not the right skill set. And the biggest thing they said was the integration period afterwards. The integration period afterwards is so, and you mentioned this earlier on, you said, you know, people go and they go out into their world and they because you leave ayahuasca feeling fucking on a high. It's like, wow, I feel so good. This is the best drug ever. And then you go back into everyday life and you're like, oh, fuck, nothing's changed here. What the hell's going on, you know? And you get back into your routines and your patterns and your stories and your life, and it really starts to unfold. And the London man, I can't remember the documentary, he did it, and he was the same. He was like, he went back into his normal life and he had all these great ideas, and the next thing he's back and doing exactly the same thing as he was. So the integration period's really important, right? Am I on the nail there? Yeah.
100%. Look, we've had some clients that I've spoken to that we do with that 7-week program, and we do obviously the retreats, and they've been like, "Look, this is such a great connection." Dot dot dot. Honestly, I can't afford both, and like 9 times out of 10, I will say, do the 7-week program
Yeah.
and then save for the retreat, because fundamentally, I mean, yes, there's we want to have this profound spiritual breakthrough experience. It's so many amazing stories out there, but unless you anchor this work back in the 3-dimensional, the mental and the emotional aspects of this work, like the thing I always say is psychedelics or plant medicines, they're not positive, they're neutral. They amplify what is. And they can help us develop our sensitivity, which is great. But in of itself, it's not beneficial unless we do that work, right? And there's so many people out there, unfortunately, that have been on the medicine path for decades, even. And you can look at their websites, or you can look at, you can hear where they're at, and their house is still a mess. Their relationships are still a disaster. They're full of judgment. They haven't healed scarcity wounds. The list, and you can just, or full of pride, right? There's this real kind of egoic, like, here I am. I've been on the medicine path for 20 years. I've done, 412 ayahuasca ceremonies. You're just like, whoa, like, what is going on here? And, you can look at any psychedelic community, or like, and say, like, is this a reflection of the energy that you aspire to? I think you and I could probably say, like, probably not. It's not that, it's not that good things necessarily come from plant medicine. It's the intentionality, it's the context, it's the guidance, it's the mental and emotional work that fundamentally can set these tools up for the success that they can have when those things are put in place.
Yeah, I love that. I loved all of that. That was brilliant. It's so true. So another thing I really want to touch on is microdosing. Now, this is starting to be quite I mean, unless I'm just getting into the talk about it's probably been going around for so long, but it's becoming quite popular. Is that the word is popular? One thing gets popular, but a lot of there's from what I'm seeing is there's a lot of people that are microdosing. Like, what is it? Like, it's I know it's taking a little bit of a plant every now and again over a period and keeping yourself topped up. To me, it's like someone who smokes pot and just keeps smoking, like you've always got it in your system. What actually is it? What are the benefits? Do you do microdosing? Yeah.
I have done a bit in the past. The first distinction that I would make is I do make a meaningful distinction here when it comes to marijuana, because I think marijuana has a place. I believe that. I think for most people, unfortunately, it tends to be treating the symptom of the problem rather than the problem itself. I think it also has much more of a habitual relationship. Again, growing up in Hawaii, like most of my friends found this thing is at age 10, 11, and 12 years old. It was really a problem. And so, yeah, I mean, it's kind of pizza and ice cream vibes, right? And video games, or at least that's my association from my childhood. And it was just not, it wasn't uplifting and improving their human experience. And it's got that addictive potential. In contrast, I do feel, medically speaking, these medicines are recognized as non-addictive, right? And they are neurogenetic. So they are reconnecting mind, body, heart, and spirit in ways that they haven't been connected before. With microdosing specifically, I would say that we're early in the game in terms of our understanding. We actually understand a lot more of what I would describe of macrodosing from a purely scientific perspective. Some of the healers that I know and love and respect do a little bit of it themselves, but tend to go more for the macrodosing over time. I've done a little bit of, again, personal experience, microdosing. It doesn't do a lot for me. Other people swear by it. And so, each of us have quite a, different constitution. And so, there are different protocols for different microdoses, for different medicines that are out there, and different people have quite different results, as is the case with larger doses. For me personally, what I tend to find is not enough or too much. I haven't found that right amount.
That'd be too much, because I'm a pig, remember?
You're like, oh, well, there goes Monday. So for me, I don't tend to do it because I just don't see
Yeah.
that it helps me a great deal. But that's just me personally.
Why do people do it? Is it like, is it when like when people that are doing it and doing it properly, is it to get in there and to clear something over a long period of time, or is it just to feel good, or what? Like, I don't understand it.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I can, I have had a few experiences where it lifts the vibe a little bit, right? So it just I think it can really help people drop into flow, from what I've seen, quite a bit of, which is fundamentally it's turning off the prefrontal cortex, right, and just recognizing that you already are the thing that you're trying to be. And so I think that can really help with the creative process for a lot of people, and allows for, I would say, a more direct access to intuition. A lot of this work is about tapping into the infinite wisdom that exists within each and every one of us. And so we are trying to access that channel, of deep intuition. And I think microdosing can play a role for some. For others, it doesn't work. And I think, from experiencing or witnessing some of the journeys from others, the combination of first, going on a retreat and clearing out some of that lower level stuff, and then coming back and doing some of the microdosing, I see that has been effective for others.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because it's just come into my field. There's been a few people around me, and one girl I coach, she's always microdosing on something, and I'm like, why were you going? Hang on, let's get back over here. So she's always like, woo. So yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the other thing I'd share in relation to this, which I think is pretty interesting, is there's more science now that is evidencing that these medicines have played a fundamental role in the evolution of our minds and the prefrontal cortex in particular, right? So I think it was in the 70s, Terence McKenna first coined what's known as the Stoned Ape Theory, and he was seen as kind of a bit far out there at the time. And yeah, I mean, the whole basis of that is that we came out of the jungles and down from the trees and onto the savannah, and started picking up some mushrooms from feces from other animals, and all of a sudden we had this imagination of this, brighter future. In essence, these medicines show us things that relate to more empathy and things that relate to more courage, right? And so maybe you should put a rock at the end of a spear and go over the mountain and see what's on the other side of it, right? And so that's, the theory is that that's played a fundamental role in the evolution of our minds, and indeed our species, and our ability to empathize as a collective, which has obviously been fundamental to our ability to achieve greater and greater things.
Yeah. Ooh, juicy. I love it. So is there anything that you would like to, or what's something that you'd like to leave the people that are listening? Just anything that intuitively comes through that you'd like to talk about, or something that you'd like to let them know, or just anything that flows through?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that come to mind. One is, each of us is here for a specific reason, right? And spiritual development is fundamental to that. And so whatever it is that is going to be your path or your tools, doesn't need to be plant medicine, it could be meditation, could be something else. There's something that Ram Dass says that I really love, which is that your tools should capture you, right, for a period. But that's in of itself, that's not the outcome. What you're looking for is freedom, even from those tools. And so, these are just, plant medicine is just one of many tools that can help you, that can help you. And so, in essence, what I would encourage people to do is to begin to lend more primacy to their inner world. And so finding the right ways for them individually, is for them to decide. So get out there in the world and connect with other people who are on the path, understand what's worked for them, understand what resonates with you, and connect to your own why, for pursuing this. And if that why is there, then it's going to yield untold benefits to quality of life. And if it isn't there, then to begin by connecting with that and why you want to develop accordingly.
I love that. That's so good. Oh, so we're going to have all your details down below, so people can click on there. And if you're feeling called to go to retreat, if you can't travel now, then get yourself ready, because start your meditation now and get ready to go. so that you can contact Jonathan and see, because I'm actually very interested in the 7-day one. I'm like, ooh, that's something that really I like. That really, I got goosebumps when you were talking about that, which is truth bumps, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's still the way that I work now, even though having broader access, like, setting a container like that, and doing it privately with someone who's really knows what they're doing. So,
and I know
Lisa, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming. I love it. I've loved speaking to you, and I'm sure that we'll do another one very soon on perhaps something a little bit different. So thank you so much for giving us your time and your wisdom and your knowledge. And I just like talking it real. It was brilliant, really, really good. So thank you so much, Jonathan, for being one of the guests on the Art of Quantum Healing. And I'm sure we'll be speaking very soon.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. Please make sure to subscribe to my channel and help us grow the community by sharing it with your friends. I am your host, Lisa Nadler, and this is The Art of Quantum Healing.